And we are live. Hi, Sue. I'm so
Hi,
excited
Emily.
that you're here today.
It's so good to be here with you.
We met in a coaching class, right? We were a coaching program. I signed up. You had been in it for a while, but I signed up for the last quarter of 2020, and that's how I met you. And you've been so helpful because you're a really good coach, and I know that I can always go and ask you questions, and you've just always been there for me, and I appreciate that.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Well, I'm living my meant to be. So coaching is my meant to be, and I love it. So I'm glad it's been able to give you some positive insights, because I know you've certainly given me a lot.
Yeah. Well, as coaches, we just help each other out.
That's what we do.
Yeah. Welcome to the listeners. If you're here, post a comment. Let us know you're here. If you have any questions for Sue as we go along, post them and show her some support. So the topic tonight is navigating transitions in our lives. And we have lots of different transitions in our lives. And you say you've got 35 years of balancing caregiving and your professional career. And I think that's why you're so interested in this navigating transition. So we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say. So we've got some people commenting. If they haven't registered their name with StreamYard, it'll show up as Facebook user. So we can't really tell who they are, but
we'll say hi, user.
Jenny and Christy, I'm thinking. Hi, everybody. Okay, so why is navigating transition so important to you?
As you mentioned, Emily, I've for about as long as I've been in a professional career of sales in enterprise application software, I've also been navigating roles of caregiving support. And what I learned in my life early on is you keep the different aspects of your life separated. So
right.
Your personal life you don't bring into work, and vice versa and all that.
Don't let anyone know you're a caregiver at home, right? Just act like everything's just perfect.
Exactly. And my gracious sakes alive, is that a heavy burden? But that's what we knew. I mean, that's all I knew. And so when I took a sabbatical from my professional career, I met my husband when I was 46. And when I was 48, I got married and took a sabbatical from my professional career. What I recognized, because I was continuously in roles of caregiving, I was a better caregiver because I brought things in for my professional life. I was better in my personal life because of things I've learned in my professional life. I was better in some of the communities I participated in. So I finally said, what's the common denominator between all of these? I'm not going to separate the aspects of my life. I'm going to bring all of them together. And what I recognized that was a really powerful lesson that underscored all of them was how we navigate transitions in our lives. And we're continuously in transitions. And I looked at transitions that had gone well and not so well in caregiving and in other areas of my life. And I recognized that learning how to do them successfully made so much better in each area of my life that was really the common foundation. And that's where I focus now.
Oh, so we got Chris Betton. Hi, Chris. Well, thanks for joining. So who were you providing care for?
The first person I provided care for was actually my next door neighbor. And it's been my grandmother and my father and several friends, and now my husband. And wow. I am still in roles. My husband was formally diagnosed with Alzheimer's the beginning of 2014, and he was symptomatic in 2013. So I'm still navigating my journey with him.
Wow. Have you had a break? Because you've got like 35 years. So neighbor, mother, grandma, it's always been, wow.
Yes. And so the lessons that I have learned that keep me positive and balanced have allowed me to be able to sustain where I am over the course of 35 years. Because if I hadn't learned them, I'm not sure where I would be right now.
Yes, no kidding. Hi, Christy. Thanks for joining us. Okay, Sue, I can just say that when my kid's dad got sick right after I retired in 2019, and we had to care for him for 5 months before he passed away, going to the hospital, all the appointments, all the tracking of the medicine, all that. You've got like 34 and a half years more than that on me. And I don't know how you've done it, because it is really hard. and I wasn't working. I was retired, and my daughter took off of work, and then his fiance didn't work. So none of us had a full-time job where we had to do it on top of that. I mean, I was podcasting and trying to start my coaching business, but not a full-time job. So
yeah, it is the learning how to stay positive and balanced really helps me navigate it along with everything else I do. And if we don't have those resources, because I know in the beginning, I was not positive and balanced. I call it like being on an emotional roller coaster, often blindfolded, because no matter what the diagnosis is, whether it's an illness, whether it's a long-term progression of something, it doesn't have to be a type of dementia. It could be anything. It's a heart disease. It's anything. Whenever we have something like that, if we don't learn how to navigate that and be able to navigate the other areas of our lives at the same time, all of our life becomes overwhelming. Yes. And the things that are most important for us, we put down, and you can't sustain it. It just can't be sustained.
Well, hi, Karen. Corinne. Thanks for
Corinne.
Hi, Corinne. Yeah, so I think I would say too that, they always say, put your oxygen mask on first, and they tell you as mom, you should be taking care of yourself. But I think when you're a caregiver, it becomes ultimately really, really clear that you've got to take care of yourself or you can't keep going.
You actually do. The most important thing we can do is really hyper focus on who we are. And what I talk a lot about is understanding our natural personality, how we're naturally wired, because each of us is naturally wired differently. One of the things that was the most transformational for me in my caregiving management and taking care of myself and learning to do that was learning my personality and learning how I naturally look at things when things are going well, and I naturally see the world when I'm under periods of stress. And so understanding our personalities helps us have permission to be the best version of ourselves, rather than, like when my dad was diagnosed, all of us, I'm a caregiver. My husband's diagnosed, I'm a caregiver. Well, they have a diagnosis and there's all this detail. I'm a caregiver. It's the whole umbrella of everything. And yet I'm not qualified to be all those things, but I thought I was supposed to. I didn't have the guide for it. And so many of us, and this is not just in roles of caregiving. This happens when we're a parent. This happens when we take on responsibilities in our professional careers. This is in every area of our life that we all of a sudden, okay, I'm this. And yet we don't look at how we can become the best version of ourselves in whatever this is. And so I started with really learning my personality and understanding my natural view of the world, and then the things that held me back from having clarity on that, the beliefs that were holding me back, and getting clarity on that. And so those are the things that started the foundation of me being able to understand how I can be the best in my roles of a caregiver, because then I could let go of the things that weren't, and I could find the people who were the most qualified for that.
Yeah, I worked for the Navy for 38 years, right? And we didn't get a lot of training in terms of, training that was focused on understanding ourselves. I mean, you don't really get that until you become a quote unquote leader. And then when you get that, it's kind of like, I knew my Myers-Briggs, but I didn't know anything about Enneagram, about patterns, about all the stuff that I've learned since I've left, and that I learned the Navy since I've left. Yeah. And joined that coaching program that we were in, and other coaching programs. There's so many ways that you can work with a coach, or, I guess you could read books, but working with a coach, I think, really helps, because there are things about your personality that you can't really see yourself. And it takes a coach or somebody else to kind of help you with the blind spots. But once you figure that out, then it does make it life so much easier, easier to live in flow. You understand yourself better. You're not as frustrated. You're able to say, oh, that's why I'm doing that, and I want to choose a different reaction. Can you want to expand a bit more on why it's so important to know your personality?
Yes, and I love the fact
I think you need more than just Myers-Briggs personality test, right?
Exactly. I love the fact that you use the word choice, because that's ultimately where we want to get to. A quick background. Our personalities are formed, our genetics determine our natural way of viewing the world when we come into the world. And our early childhood experiences and our early family environment kind of shape them and sometimes put veils over them. And by the time we're about 7 or 8, our little personalities are formed and off we go to the next thing. And for many of us, we don't reevaluate those. They just become the natural, it's the undercurrent of what the way we live our lives. So whatever we were at 7 or 8 is where we become. The thing that happens, though, is, I don't know about you, but I know that I'm a lot different than I was when I was 7 or 8. And so we outgrow our personality of when we were 7 or 8, and that's where we sometimes have resistance. You may see somebody who's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. They're the nicest person when things are going great, but under stress, they just become this other person and they're overwhelmed. Well, that may have served them when they were a child, but they don't know that they're a choice. So there are several things that we can do. The first one is you should become aware. You just start having unquenchable curiosity like a child. How do I act? How do I think, feel, and act in different situations? No judgment, no story, no criticism, just observation. So we just observe. Then the second thing is, I don't know how many personality assessments you've taken. 6, 8, 10, 12, we've taken all of them. The thing that's interesting is those tend to be applied incorrectly. They're things that are personality informing assessments, but people use them to label themselves. I'm an INTJ.
Yeah.
I'm a this, I'm a that. The thing that we can use the magic of these to inform us the way we are in certain aspects, in certain areas of our lives. For example, there's a really powerful communicator whose name is Andy Stanley. And he communicates both in a faith-based environment and a marketplace environment. And when he is on the stage and when he's in communicating, very, very written word, whatever he does, very well spoken, very powerful, very engaging. And as he says, when I'm on there, the characteristics of my personality that I need to be able to express in that role at that time, I bring forward. And yet when I step off the stage and I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I'm a friend, those characteristics of my personality step back. And you would not classify me in the same way when I'm not on the stage as you would when I am. And one of the lessons that I learned from that, and one of the things that I work with my clients on and that we see all the time, is that when we take these personality informing assessments, evaluate them in the different aspects of our life. Some people use the wheel of life. How do I want to look in that? So when we have our personality assessments, they inform us, they don't define us. Yeah. And so we learn from each of them, and they use them as like pieces of the puzzle. And then when we're challenged in a particular area in our lives, we can go back and explore what insights we can gain from the assessments that we've taken to give us the opportunity. For the example, the Enneagram teaches us how we naturally act, automatically think, feel, and act under times of stress. And back to your point, well, that puts us at choice. We no longer have to unconsciously react like we would have when we were a child. So the potential of us understanding our personality is so valuable for us in all areas of our lives.
It seems like a lot of work, and it takes a lot of time, and everyone's just so busy. So how do you make the time for that?
First of all, I look at my life as there are things I spend my time doing, and there are things I invest my time on. I've looked at each of these as something that are like layers that I step into briefly, and I look at them, and then I step away, and then I step back into them periodically. And the way that I know to step into them is I become curious about something. I have a question. Something gives me a nudge. This doesn't seem quite right. Or, oh, I really like this. And in either case, I go back and look at all of these resources I have access to and help teach me, because what I ultimately want to do is to continue to chip away at the things that no longer serve me and start expressing more the things that do. So you don't just all of a sudden say, I'm going to spend a year doing this.
Right.
It's in each experience that you have where you get a little nudge, where you get a little, ooh, I don't know, where somebody says, wow, you had your cat claws out.
Right.
You can go back and explore it. So, hopefully that helps. I don't do it just continuously.
How did it help you? And when did you figure out that that was really important to helping navigate the transition in your lives, understanding your personality? When did you figure that out in your 35 years of caregiving? Early or later?
Later.
Mm-hmm.
Later. I actually really explored it and learned about it when I was in a role of caregiving support for my dad.
Okay.
And it was a really powerful thing, because when you grow up, my dad, my hero, you grow up with them. I mean, he's the person who's, way up high on the pedestal. And I assumed that I could express how I cared for him in the same way that he cared for me as I was growing up. And it didn't work. And I felt disappointed in myself. And I thought, there's something wrong here. And then I started studying the Enneagram. And it was like this book to who I was opened up. And even more powerfully, it taught me who my dad really was. And now what I do with everyone I work with, and I've done it with my husband from a caregiving perspective, I understand their personalities as well as mine.
That's really good. Karen has a question here. Corinne. Corinne says, what have you learned that will remain true for you for the rest of your life?
That is so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
I came into this world just perfect and beautiful. I mean, who's seen a baby that doesn't think they're just perfect and beautiful? And I created, through my experiences, I created things that kind of clouded that. And what I know to remain true is the more that I explore and get back to the beauty of the reason I was brought into the world that came into me, and accepting myself for exactly who I am, the more access I have to being that person. And that will always remain true to me.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. Good question, Corinne. So, why is it important to have a process to navigate the transitions in our lives? And, I'm assuming that you've started a coaching program on this because you feel like, there's so many people you could help. I wish I'd known you when I was going through this with my kid's dad, because it was a really challenging time. But, how do you help people, and why is it important to have a process for that?
Just like you, I wish I had been smart enough to think of the process many, many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, what I just said is the reason I didn't. It was, I would jump into something and just do it, go because of my natural personality characteristics. Like, take it, seize the moment. Whether it's a bad moment, make the best of it. If it's a great moment, make the best of it. And I was, I do a lot from my head. Yeah. And so one of the things I realized is that by doing that, sometimes I ended up in places I didn't want to be. Sometimes I resisted going through a transition because I really didn't want to have to do it. And then by the time you actually do it, the potential and possibilities have diminished, and you kind of have to settle. Or I was stuck. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to get someplace else. So I was floundering around, and I was open to hearing somebody else saying, you'd be really good at that, or, you should do that. And I would just, oh, thank you. Somebody gave me direction. Let me just do that. So again, I wouldn't end up where I knew I was meant to be. And I didn't know what that was. Now, sometimes just floundering around, I was still phenomenally successful. So it doesn't mean that when you don't get where you're meant to be, that you're not successful. But I didn't feel satisfied. No matter how successful I was, I felt like something was missing. And I didn't know what it was. And so I finally, in the combination of caregiving with my dad, I recognized that learning how to navigate transitions and learning how to get clarity on where it is I wanted to go and why and what it meant for me would help me get there. And then when I got there, I would be satisfied. And this is whether it was a positive thing. This was whether I had a promotion in my work, whether I was part of a community that was fulfilling, or whether it was in my roles of caregiving. Mm-hmm. But it changed it from feeling like, okay, I'm here, but is here where I'm meant to be, to now I know I'm where I'm meant to be.
So how do you know that?
I went through I created a process, surprise, surprise, I created a process. that helped me identify exactly where it is I wanted to be and why. And so now what I do is, again, I start with awareness. I raise to my level of consciousness. Where is it I want to be and why? What purpose does it have in my life? What's the value? And I go through a number of questions, but I first figure out where it is I want to be. And then I can envision what that is. Then I can say to myself, well, why is it I don't already have it? If I know this is where I'm meant to be, why don't I already have it? And I can evaluate why this isn't already in my life and look at choices and personalities. And then I can go to a place that's been the most transformational part of me in my life is massive acceptance and radical presence. And once I'm in that place, then I can look at how to get to the transition of where I want to be.
So massive acceptance of what?
Massive acceptance. Massive acceptance means I accept fully, completely, absolutely, 100% in its entirety, exactly where I am in this moment, exactly where I am. I don't have to like it. Mm-hmm. I don't have to agree with it. Mm-hmm. I don't have to understand it. I just have to accept it. And from that place of acceptance, that means I'm not bringing in the story. We all have stories. Sometimes stories are really great for us. Yeah. When I'm in a place of acceptance, I'm not bringing in the story. I'm not a victim. I'm an observer. There's no judgment. I accept there's an isness to it. I'm just right here. And that allows me to be radically present in the moment and not be looking at it through the lens of what happened in the past and not be fortune telling what might be in the future, but exactly what do I have access to? What is in this moment that I can control and that I can do something about? And so it helps me make very much more wise choices in that moment and then accept 100% responsibility for it. And when I do that, staying fully present, then I feel great about my choices. And I can tell you where that came from. I don't know if we've got time, but if you'd like, I can tell you the story of where that came from.
Wait, because, yeah, I was going to ask. And hi, Jenny. I was going to ask you, like, can you give a specific example of when you did that?
I will. So again, as I mentioned, my dad is one of my care receivers. And one night I was watching him. He and my stepmom, their home had a lanai on the back, and it had a sloping lawn down to a concrete walkway with a pond in the middle. And it was like 5 o'clock. It was starting to be dusk. We're down in Florida. We've got this Bermuda grass, which is like pieces of glass. So it's really rough. And all of a sudden, my dad, he's got dementia. He says, it's time to walk the dog. And he gets up, puts the leash on the dog, and starts going out the gate of the lanai. Now, the lanai has two doors. One goes on this nasty Bermuda grass that's going to go down the slope down there. The other one goes on a concrete path that's really solid and easy. My father, my whole life, taught me how to think, taught me how to be safe. His focus was how to be able to think on your own, how to be safe. So I'm thinking the safe thing is going out this door. Mm-hmm. Now I accept my dad's got dementia, but I'm going to keep him safe. So I said, Daddy, let's go this way. My dad, he's got dementia. Walk the dog. He knows to go out that door. That's the door he wants to go out. So he's trying to go out that door. I'm trying to get him to go out the other door. He's getting anxious. The dog's getting anxious. I'm getting anxious. He's pushing to go out the door. So I finally okay, we're going to go out the door. So then I'm like, okay, I need to what if he falls down and breaks his hip? What if the dog pulls him and tips him over? What if, all these things, I'm projecting these things.
Yeah, you're getting all anxious and worried.
I'm anxious. I'm not focused. He's trying to walk the dog. I'm focused on all the things that could happen. I'm trying to stay ahead of him. I'm trying to do all these things. So we finally get down. We walk the dog. Everything is fine. But he's anxious. The dog's anxious. I'm anxious. It does not calm down. My poor stepmother, when she came back home, this was not an easy experience. So driving home, I said, there is a lesson for me to learn in this experience. My father, who I love more than anybody else in the world, I'm trying to keep him safe, all the things he taught me for my whole life. I accept the fact that he has dementia. I accepted the fact that we were going to walk the dog. So I'm staying present to that. But what I realized is I hadn't massively accepted what was going on, and I wasn't radically present in the moment. And when I recognized that and what those meant, here's what the experience would have been.
Yeah, what would have been?
We're sitting on the lanai. My dad, it's time to walk the dog. Okay. He gets up, he puts the leash on the dog, he goes toward the door. I think in my mind, that's not a great choice because the grass and all the other things, but that's the way my dad knows. That's all he has access to. I would have opened the door and held it open so there's no chance it would have hit him on the way out. I would have talked very calmly with him and said, oh, Daddy, look at the bird right there. Isn't that beautiful? Look, I would have had us walk calmly and slowly down the hill, and I would have walked together with him. I would have stayed on the right side, the side that had the dog for the leash, because in case the dog decided to pull away, I could hold him. But no big deal. When we would have gone down there and we would have had a nice walk. And then as we were coming back, I probably would have stopped where the walkway came up and said, oh, Daddy, look right up there. Let's do this. And seeing if he wanted to walk up that way, we would have. If not, we would have walked up the other way. Massive acceptance and radical presence. I could stay fully present to what he had access to in that moment.
Yeah. And so after you learned that, were you more accepting and had radical presence in different moments? I mean, I think it takes some of that analysis, and then then you're not going to be perfect the next time, but maybe you just keep gradually working on it and you get better.
It keeps getting better, and I use it in every area of my life now. There's so little drama. I stay positive and balanced. It's so much easier. I'll give you a quick example with my husband. He's in the later stages of Alzheimer's disease, and he had a medical emergency a few months ago. When he came back from the hospital, he wasn't able to stand anymore. And so the team, he's in a care facility, and the care facility team and I were talking about his care. And practicing massive acceptance and radical presence, I was able to ask the question, hey, you guys, do you think it's time for us to have him assessed by hospice care? So there was no emotion. It was simply a question. It was simply, this is one of the things, as we're discussing his care, this is one of the things to bring up. And each one of them said, yes, that's the right thing to do. Let's make that happen. And we did, and it was the right thing for him to go under hospice care. And so by doing that, I didn't have the emotions of it. It was just like, okay, in this moment, as we're assessing his care and what he needs, I had the capacity to ask the question, is hospice care a good consideration for us?
Yes, because I understand that. I can relate to that from when Bruce was sick. And his fiance would sometimes push back on the doctors and what they were saying and didn't want to hear what they were saying. And I understood that because it's not something that she wants to hear, but she needed to accept. Mm-hmm. It would have helped her with stress probably to just not keep fighting what the real answer is.
So much less emotion, and you don't bring all the baggage.
Yeah.
Now, it also doesn't mean, and one of the things I don't want anybody to think, it doesn't mean that you don't have emotions, but it allows you to have the emotion that's appropriate for the experience you're going through. Mm-hmm. And so would I have preferred that we were having a conversation about hospice care? Yeah.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, by doing that, I'm able to give my husband the care he needs. My two goals for him are that he's safe and happy. The consideration of hospice care helps us achieve our goal of keeping him safe and happy. And so that's the right thing to do. And I didn't feel guilty about it. I didn't feel bad that I had to do it. I didn't try to resist it. I didn't try to pretend it wasn't going to happen. Staying radically present allowed that to be a conversation we had so the right thing could be done, because it also helps the care team.
Yeah.
Them do the thing. So I was able to look at not just what I would have preferred, but what's best for my husband and what's best for the people who are supporting him.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing in any area. This is the same thing in leadership. It's the same thing in anything.
Right. So you've got this course that you're starting, launching on April 8th, which is 5 steps for positively navigating your caregiving journey. How long is that course? You want to tell us a little bit about it and who's it for?
Sure. Yes. I felt really part of my meant to be was to write a book about my journey with caregiving and the 5 steps to positively navigate your caregiving journey. I wrote that in 2019 and was incredibly grateful that it became an international bestseller and stayed that way for quite a while. And what I realized is that I wanted to take a deeper dive with people, because as I talk about it, people continue to ask follow-up questions and deeper levels of questions. And there's also new information that's added to our journey, like COVID and some of the other things that have happened. And also what I didn't include in the book was the depth of understanding our personality. So I created an online course that's a 6-week course, and it goes through the journey begins with you, which is understanding our personalities, and then the 5 steps to positively navigate your caregiving journey.
Wow, that's awesome. So it's online, and then do you coach people too, or do they just go online and take the course? Or
I do it live. I do it live because I really feel like the engagement, everybody's different.
Yeah.
And so I conduct the course live, and then I have a Facebook group where twice a week I'll go in and do some live Q&A. I'm not a medical doctor. I don't give other advice, but as it relates to the course and lessons that I've learned in caregiving. And I also am having the recording of it because I know not everybody's available at the time of the course every week. So I make the recording available, and then people can follow up with questions on it. And then I have individual coaching as well.
Oh, okay. How long does it take to go through that course? How long does it take to go through your course that launches
6 weeks.
6 weeks. Okay. All right. And people can find out about it by going to your website?
They can go to Sue Ryan Solutions, or they can just email me at sue@sueryan.solutions. And I'd be glad to share information and answer any questions for them.
Yeah. So that course is specifically for people who are trying to balance caregiving and working, or who are in the caregiving role, right?
Yeah, I have a program which I call Successfully Navigating Transitions, and that's a 6-week program as well. And that teaches people how to navigate transitions in all areas of their lives. I've taken the concept of navigating transitions as it relates specifically to caregiving and uses the specific caregiving language. And that's the 5 steps to positively navigate your caregiving journey. And so both of my offerings are on how to help navigate transitions.
Yeah. So you also have this 10 questions to eliminate what's missing in your life.
Yes.
You want to talk about that? And that's something that they can get if they email you, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It is, I didn't know what I didn't know. I felt, it actually occurred to me at a time when I should be feeling the best about myself. I happen to have been part of a great sales team, and being in the leadership role, I was being recognized as the top performer in our company. We happened to have set a record that was a global record in our company. And I was about to be recognized for that performance. And I'm on the stage behind the curtains getting ready to do this. And I thought, there is something something is missing. I have to figure out what this is. That this is the moment that I should be the most excited about things in my life. Why am I feeling like that? And so I began evaluating how do I determine what's missing in my life, so that when I am celebrating being at a place like that, or whether it's just watching our granddaughter at a soccer match, whatever brings me joy, I can celebrate those moments authentically. And so when I went through and explored that, I recognized that as valuable as it was for me, it was something I wanted to share with everybody. And so I just give that to anybody who's interested in it.
Okay, so like if somebody, you're saying if someone's thinking, I should be happy, I've got this, everything seems to be going great, but I just feel like something's missing and I don't even know what it is.
I feel like something's missing and I don't know what it is. I feel like I'm not enough. I feel like something's just not right. And, some of the things are, that I've heard and I've said myself, well, I don't want to share it with anybody else because everybody else would say, well, are you kidding me? Look at your life.
Yeah, right.
Or I'm smart. I should be able to figure this out on my own. Well, why can't I figure this out? Or, maybe it's nothing. Maybe I should just, settle for this. This is good enough. And so all of these things start playing, the soundtrack in our head. And I just said, no, something really is missing. And so it's time for me to figure them out. And so the part of the reason I wanted to share it with other people is because so many people I have talked with have said those things. So I'm not the only person who had that. And I really want people to be able to explore what's possible for them.
That's cool. That's why I think we get along so well, because where I coach is along the lines of, embrace your authentic self and release the fear of judgment about what other people are saying. Because a lot of times I think we do things because we should, and we feel like we should or whatever, or other people think we should. and we don't really take the time to figure out what we really want. And so it's like, create the life of your dreams, create a life that you love. There's ways to do it. But sometimes our brain says, no, that could never happen, or you couldn't do that, or that's crazy. And we listen to that.
Yeah. The only thing I like about the word should is it's a trigger.
Yeah.
Should is a trigger, where what I say is that when any sentence you have the word should in, when you get to the period, take the period out and put a comma. I should do this, whatever
Right.
the this is.
Right.
And you put a period, because then you've labeled it, then you've said it, but you end there. When you say I should do something, you stop and then you just hold it, but you don't really explore it. Then if you replace the period with a comma, you say, well, really no, because this or this or this, or, it would make sense if I would do this or this or this, but expand it out, put a comma in there and write it out and really, really explore it, so that you're not just stopping. It's the same way with words that we use as labels to define ourselves: worry, should, guilt, sorry. Oh, I feel guilty about that. Then you put a period on it. Well, how's that working for you? So take any of those things. The only thing that's good about them is that they should trigger you to want to explore them and explore what's possible, as opposed to what somebody else has said or anything else. Yeah.
I agree. And I think it's really important, if you are somebody who's doing that introspection and you are trying to figure out what's missing in your life, and you are desiring to go and create a life that you really love, and make some changes, go through some transitions, I think it's important to pay attention to who you're surrounding yourself with. So, you, Sue, Jenny, Corinne, Christy, we've all been, in a group together, and we help motivate each other. And sometimes family is well-meaning, but they just don't understand. Like my mom sometimes will be like, well, why are you retired? I'm like, why are you working so hard to set up this movement and to do the coaching? And it's like, because I love it. It's what I love to do. I want to help people. It's not work to me. But so you've got to be careful who you listen to. And she's not trying to tell me to stop, but she wonders. And so you've got to surround yourself with people who are going to encourage you to keep doing what you love to do and to figure that out.
Yes. Or be strong enough that when someone does say, you can't do that, that you don't allow that to become your truth. One of the things that happens is that we allow somebody else to make a statement that becomes our truth. And so if they say that, you can receive it and hear it, and then you choose what you are going to believe. That may be your perspective, and I respect your right to have that perspective. I don't choose for that to be mine. This is what I choose.
Right. And I think you have to make that time in your day or in your week for reflection. Like you said, when you left to go after that incident with your dad and walking the dog, you thought about it, you reflected on it. And I think reflection about our day, how did it go? What could I do differently or better? Or am I taking on somebody else's opinion and believing it for myself? That introspection, is making time for that, is really important. I didn't do that when I was raising my kids and, being a single parent and working a busy job. I feel like I should have done that more, but should.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, but that's a judgment, we can't judge in hindsight. We can only reflect. However, when we look at things like that, a question that I was taught, there are two of them that are just so powerful for me, and I use them in my morning quiet time, or whether it's in the afternoon, whatever it is what is there here for me to know? What is there here for me to learn?
Mm-hmm.
And so in a lot of the experiences that we have, there are some times where I will have had an experience that happened some time ago. And now, because I accept them, and part of accepting them is that I don't have an emotional charge attached to it. I just accept it the way it is. That there will be a point in time where the lesson becomes apparent to me. And so when I ask, what is there here for me to know? And what is there here for me to learn? Every once in a while, an insight about something that happened previously will come to me, or a thought about something I'm about to do will come to me. And so it's very open. It's non-judgmental. It's, hey, I'm curious. It's going back to being unquenchably curious, which is one of the greatest gifts we have.
Well, how do you accept something and not have the emotion?
I accept it because I'm a choice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can either choose to accept it or choose not to accept it. That's not going to change it.
All right.
So, you know, if something happens, it happened. Okay. I can accept that it happened. I don't have to agree with it. I don't have to like it. I don't have to understand it. Just have to accept it, because if I accept it, then I have access to everything that are the gifts that were brought into the world with me, all of my experiences, everything that's like my personal library of stuff, all the wisdom that I've gained, all the knowledge I've gained. I have access to all of that because I'm not clouding it based on, this isn't fair. What else in my life happened that wasn't fair? Oh yeah, there was that. Clouded. Well, this is what happened when that wasn't fair. So I'm now looking at it through the lens of something else that I thought wasn't fair. So I no longer see this as, this is what this is. So right. When I just accept it, there's no story, there's no victim, there's no, well, this is what happened the last time. It's just there, and I have access to be able to figure out what to do. And this has been one of the best things for me. I don't have the ego of feeling like I have to know the answer or I have to be responsible for the answer. It's easy for me to say, even in a position of leadership, it's easy for me to say, hey, I don't know, will you help me? And I can go out and find the people who know what it is I don't know, because I don't feel like I have to know that.
I'm just thinking, like, you know, you could take the attitude that, you know, really sucks. My husband has Alzheimer's. This is happening to me. And you could just be all emotional about it and kind of fighting it with your emotions. And what you're saying is, that's not going to change the situation. It is what it is.
It is. And so one of the other things that I do, and you're 100% right. And now that he's been in a care community for several years, I've observed the people who are exactly where this sucks. This disease is terrible. All these, this is the lens they have. I respect their having that lens. I believe in my life that these experiences are there to teach me something about myself and to make me a better person, or I wouldn't be having them. And so the more clarity I have on how to be present in the moment helps me become a better person. It helps me learn how to make choices. It helps me learn how to find the resources that have the answers when I don't have it. The other thing it allows me to do is to see the beauty in the moment. Now, quick example with my husband. And again, these are examples that go in leadership as well. But with my husband, he doesn't have access to knowing my name anymore. He doesn't get out of bed anymore. There are a lot of parts of his life that he doesn't have access to anymore. And yet when I go see him and I accept all of that and I'm fully present, when he smiles, it just touches my heart. I don't care if he knows I don't care if he knows my name. When I tell him I love him and he smiles, that's a beautiful thing. So I can see beauty in the moment. I can also see when he's having a challenge that he doesn't have capacity to express. So it gives me access in those moments to see very clearly, no matter what the experience is.
I think when I look back on it, I think unconsciously, that's kind of how I dealt with my son's alcoholism. You know, you see sometimes parents of an addict and they're trying to figure it out and control it and, you know, force them to go to rehab, force this, force that, trying to control the whole situation. And at first I did that, but then I just had to accept that if he wanted to get better, it was up to him. It wasn't up to me. Mm-hmm. And when I did that, I think that's when he really did get better too. It took a little bit of time, but that's when he started to get better. Like one time when he went to the hospital to go to detox, I was supposed to be in a class for that week for new flag and senior executives, and I didn't drop that class and go down to be with him. And I sent him the message that you've got this. You don't need your mommy to come down. He was 23. That was really hard to do, but that was accepting. Mm-hmm. And showing him that was accepting and not being all emotional. And then because of that, I was able to make more rational and better decisions in helping him with finding care when he was getting out of the hospital and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's there are several. I mean, I learned. I'm in a 12-step recovery program, support program called Al-Anon, and I learned so many lessons. One of them, which you did, was called detach with love. You love the person, and you're allowing them to step into the consequences of their behavior because it will give them the opportunity, if they choose to step into it, to improve their lives. And the other one, and this is hugely powerful in every part of our lives, is that we're the only ones who can have our own defining moment. Other people can see it. And in recovery programs, it happens to be in a particular area. But when you look at a leadership, you look at somebody who isn't performing in their role. They're the only ones who can choose to have their defining moment. They can be notified that their performance isn't outstanding, but until they choose to take ownership of that, you can't do it for them. So the longer you protect them and you prevent them from having the consequences of their behavior, the more harm you're actually doing to them as well as to yourself. And so allowing them, it is a gift to allow people to have the consequences for their behavior, because that's the only way they're going to learn. It's the only way they're going to have their defining moment that allows them to decide what characteristics of their personality they have access to. Hey, wait a minute, I really do want this. Or, you know what, I really don't want this, so I'm out of here. But if we don't let them have that, they don't learn, and then it brings us down as well, and those around us. And there you have unintended consequences when you do that, because then other people look at you as a leader and say, well, that person isn't helping us. They're not supporting us because they're protecting them.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And for anyone's listening now, or when I publish this as a podcast, my son's like 4.5 years sober and studying engineering. So it turned out great.
Yay. Getting
married in August. So yeah, I'm excited.
You allowed him to have his own defining moment.
Yeah. 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 And so it's not easy, I guess, is what we're saying too, but it's the best way to go. Mm-hmm. So as we wrap this up, I just want to show the banners again so people can see that you've got your online course, 5 Steps for Positively Navigating Your Caregiving Journey, and it launches on April 8th. And it's not the only course that you offer, and you also do regular one-on-one coaching, and you have some other courses too, and they can find that out by going to your website.
Yeah, I'm a speaker and I'm a coach, and if they have any questions about any of my offers, if they're interested in the 6-week program on successfully navigating transitions, have them reach out to me at Sue Ryan Solutions, and we'll work something out. I do that individually and I do it in groups. I also do it as a speaker and doing workshops.
Awesome. Awesome. And then they can email you to get the 10 questions to eliminate what's missing in your life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And probably
from a perspective of caregiving. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's good to go through those 10 questions at different times in your life too, because the answers would maybe change, some of them.
It is. The answers change. And another place where the answers change is we were talking about the personality informing assessments that we take. Mm-hmm. Those tend to shift throughout our lives. It's not that they become irrelevant, but they tend to sometimes shift as we learn how to express different areas and characteristics of our personality that we may not have had access to earlier. Mm-hmm. And so going back and re-exploring those, just like we want to re-explore them in different areas of our lives, we want to go back and revisit them and just see if they still hold true for us, or if we've learned enough about ourselves that we now have access to things we didn't. Because again, I don't know about you, but I know that when I was in my 20s and 30s, my answers to some of those tests would have been different than they are today.
No, for sure. Yeah. Well, Sue, thank you very much for being my guest today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity. I had a wonderful time, and I certainly, if anybody ever has any questions, have them not hesitate to reach out.
All right. Awesome. So stay here. I'll just end the broadcast and then we can.
Cool.
Okay.